Now, the controversial Audiogate scandal has resulted in concerned citizens calling on the Chief Secretary, led by Fali Augustine administration, to demit office. Joining us this morning as we touch a bit more on that topic is none other than the Minority Councillor, Mrs. Petal Daniel Benoit. A special morning to you, and how are you doing?
I am wonderful. Good morning, Luke. It's good to be here. Good morning to your viewing and listening audience. And congratulations again to Tobago Updates on your becoming a full-fledged station on Amplia. So good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you once again, Councillor, and it's really nice to have you here on the Youth Wednesday show. I don't think we've ever had you here on the Youth Wednesdays.
No, I have never been on the Youth Wednesday show, so it's really a pleasure to be here this morning.
All right, pleasure to have you. So, recently we would have seen that a march would have taken place against whatever we are seeing here in Tobago. It was led by minority leader Kelvin Morris. We had our political leader for the PNM, that's Mr. Ansel Dennis, and other members of who support the PNM party. They would have joined that march against whatever's happening here in the political space in Tobago. So tell us a bit more about that.
Okay, so that march was hosted by concerned citizens of Tobago, and I think we would have seen some of the forerunners to that organization speaking on television. So what they would attempting to, or what they did rather, was to speak out against all that has been happening on the island. And I think what brought the straw that brought the camel's back was the whole audio gate release of that audio recording. And they are concerned about governance in Tobago. They are concerned about corruption. They are concerned about how this administration is managing the affairs of governance on this island. So, as a minority, we also agree with some of the things or some of the concerns that they shared, so we decided to join the march with concerned citizens. So yes, you would have seen the minority leader present, you would have seen the political leader of the Tobago Council, you would have seen other persons from the People's National Movement, but you would have also seen, there were also concerned citizens there, and some of the faces were very unfamiliar, unassociated in terms of organization or political affiliation, but they would have experienced some sort of pain, some sort of hurt. They would have shared the concerns, and they felt the need to come and support the march.
All right, Councillor, and you would have touched that we would have seen unfamiliar faces, some faces that we would have seen very boldly in the Tobago space that would have supported the administration that's currently governing the island, but now we are seeing them here expressing their dissatisfaction with what they are seeing with the governance on the island here in Tobago. But when you look in the space on the ground, when you listen to what people are saying on the ground, a lot of people are of the belief that when you look at the past administration, that they were allegedly engaging in corruption, they were allegedly not governing the island well, that would have led to the end for the 21 years. And people are now asking, what moral ground does the supporters of the past administration have to now speak out against what they are seeing here in Tobago? We really need to address that.
Okay. Well, the Chief Secretary would have made some claims after Tobago. All of Trinidad and Tobago would have waited over 24 days to hear what was the real thing behind this audio gate. And the Chief Secretary claimed that the past administration would have engaged in similar activities in the past. And I am sure all of Tobago would have heard the political leader of the PNM indicating that no such occurrences would have happened under the PNM. And if it is that the Chief Secretary would have found or seen corruption, or there's evidence of corruption, then there's a way to deal with that. Take your evidence to the relevant authorities, be it the police, be it the Integrity Commission, but take your findings to the relevant authorities so it can be addressed. And the people of Tobago dealt with the PNM on December 6, 2021. And this administration came into governance with an overwhelming support, 14-1. and they came with the promise that they will fix it. So all that was supposedly wrong, they will make right. So to say that I am currently engaging in conspiracy because it is my belief that the past administration would have done it is not acceptable. You promised to fix it, and Tobago bought into that promise, but to date, we have not seen where this administration is fixing anything.
All right, Councillor. So with that response, are you of the belief that the current administration is still campaigning in a time where governance of the island of Tobago is needed?
Of course, because if you listen to the audio gate, it was clear that a voice sounding like the Chief Secretary would have indicated, we don't want to stop the campaigning. We don't want to stop the campaigning and switch it off and switch it back on coming closer to the election. So we are saying to this administration, one, that you fool the people. And I want to go back to the social contract that was spoken about on the campaign trail. And one of the things in the social contract is that they promise to lead with diligence and honesty and to have a zero tolerance for corruption, nepotism and wastage, and to responsibly use state resources and privileges. What we have heard on the audio tape goes contrary to this social contract. And it is quite disappointing. It is disheartening. It is obscene. It is vexing, because at a time where this administration is saying that they don't have sufficient financial resources to do things that are required, we are seeing this kind of wastage. It is obscene. And we are asking you to do the moral thing, do the legal thing, because this issue seems not only to be moral, but it is also appears to be illegal, because we have a situation now where both the police and the Integrity Commission has confirmed that this matter is seeking their attention, and they have started investigations into the matter. So it is concerning for all of Tobago that senior officials in government, senior officials in the Tobago House of Assembly is under such serious suspicions and allegations and is being investigated by two major authorities of Trinidad and Tobago.
Wow, Councillor, wow. And we know this line, we know this quote, politics has a morality of its own. And when you look on television, on Netflix, Designated Survivors, those types of political shows, you will see instances like this where in a political party where conspiracy is involved, where it's even reached the point where police is investigating the administration, we quickly see them either resign to keep their reputation intact. We either see the people who voted them in protesting outside, but the politics in Tobago is different from what we see on TV, what we see in the US. So my question now is, do you really think that the current administration demitting office is needed, or is it that we want to see them taking accountability for their actions instead of casting the blame to what happened in the past or to bypass accountability?
Of course, what we want to see, it's twofold, because if it is that they are found wanting, then they should be held accountable and based on their own standards, because the Chief Secretary indicated again in the campaign that we all of Tobago should hold him to a higher standard. And if anyone is found in corruption or misdoing, then they will be removed from the Executive Council. And if we are to hold the Chief Secretary, and even the Chief Secretary has to hold himself to his own words, then by right, he should step aside and wait for the conclusion of the investigation. If he is cleared, then by so means. But the administration should be held accountable. And the Chief Secretary also, in his comments to the public on Friday, and even prior to that at their public town hall meeting at Fairfield Complex, the Chief Secretary would have appeared to implicate his entire executive. Because if you listen to the video recording, we would have heard two voices that sound familiar to us, that of the Chief Secretary and that of the Secretary of Education. You would have heard that there may be another voice. So even if you sum it up, you would have heard like three voices. But with the utterances of the Chief Secretary, he would have indicated that his entire executive will be exonerated. Trinidad and Tobago was not aware that his entire executive was in this meeting conspiring to use public funds for their own private and political use. But the Chief Secretary would have implicated his entire executive. And as a result, his entire executive is now held accountable for what is happening. And we are asking that it is time. It is time to do the right thing based on your own words. We are asking you to step aside. Allow the people of Tobago to choose who they think is best to lead Tobago at this time.
All right, Councillor, so we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back from that break, we're going to speak a bit more about this whole conspiracy thing, so we're going to get into that. So viewers, just stick with us. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Put a smile on your face when you're moving from place to place. Good morning, good morning, morning, good morning, morning.
And we're back, viewers, and continuing our conversations with Minority Councillor, where we'll be getting into this conspiracy. So, conspiracy. A lot of people are a bit confused about what the meaning is. So, for our viewers and listeners, please let us know what, in a political view, what does conspiracy mean and how does it tie into what we're seeing right now?
Okay. So, we would have had this discussion last night on the Minority Report, and the definition of conspiracy, is that it occurs when two or more people agree to commit an illegal act and take some steps towards its completion. Conspiracy is a crime because it does not require that the illegal act actually have been completed. So if you sit and you plan, notwithstanding that you may not have had the opportunity to execute that plan, it is still conspiracy. And what the Chief Secretary, based on the audio tape, we would have heard a plan being hatched. We would have also heard that there may have been steps towards implementing the plan, because the voices would have said that 13 persons were employed and they came through a particular individual, and all we need is 7 more. So it means that some persons were hired to spread propaganda, and it was also indicated that they could use their own personal profiles or that of a fake profile. And the Chief Secretary is saying on Friday, after we would have waited for such a long time for a response from him, that they would have planned and it would have been a strategic plan. But the mere fact that we did not see it implemented was them having some sort of moral compass. But I want to tell the Chief Secretary this morning that based on the audio recording, it was not only a plan, but we would have heard that you would have started implemented that plan. And based on what conspiracy is, it does not necessarily require that you implement the plan, but once 2 or more people sit to conspire or plan an illegal act, it is conspiracy.
Understood, Councillor. And the funny thing with this situation is that from your end, it's being called a conspiracy, but from the Chief Secretary, we're hearing calling it strategy, in which he was exploring all the options, even some of the strategies his opponents would have used or is currently using. And the notable issue with the recording is that names would have been called, names we are familiar with, but then Chief Secretary Fali Augustine would have dismissed it, saying that although they would have discussed the strategy, it was not followed through. So the question now is the onus now on the minority to prove that the plan was followed through, or is that something that we need to wait for the police to investigate?
Yes, I don't think it is the minority's responsibility to prove what has happened. The information is in the public domain, and it is the work of the investigating authorities, both the police service as well as the Integrity Commission. But more than that, Luke, one of the things that was said is that persons were to engage in lucrative employment through the assembly to spread propaganda. Lucrative employment through the Tobago House of Assembly to spread propaganda. And again, propaganda is information, especially that of a biased nature, which is misleading and is used to promote a political cause or point of view. So you are spreading propaganda, you're not engaging persons to do meaningful work of the assembly. But what we are saying and what we heard from the video recordings is that you want to engage persons, pay them lucratively to spread propaganda for your own political and personal gain because you do not want to stop politicking. And if that is not conspiracy by their own admission and by the admission of the Chief Secretary, that the entire Executive Council was a part of this plan, I don't know what is. And even when you look to the Integrity in Public Life Act, persons such as the Chief Secretary and the Secretary of Education are individuals considered to be in public life. And all of us, all parliamentarians, assemblymen, councillors, we are considered to be under the ambits of the Integrity in Public Life Act. And what the Integrity in Public Life Act does, it prohibits individual in public life from using his office for the improper advancement of his own personal financial interests or family interest. So what we heard, to me, goes against all the tenets of the Integrity in Public Life Act, even the Prevention of Corruption Act. So it appears as if the Chief Secretary, the Secretary of Education, and the entire Executive Council of the Tobago House of Assembly has questions to answer.
All right, Councillor. Wow. And we need to touch on this issue when it comes to Chief Secretary Fali Augustine. Now, in the past, we would have seen that he would have come to the public and spewed facts to the media. Alleged facts to the media about, for example, the zipline project, the assembly not having any funds when they came into office, and all other sorts of issues that would have been caused by the past administration. Now, we haven't seen any confirmed yet, but now in this space, we are seeing that the people that used to believe everything that came out of Chief Secretary Fali Augustine, we are now seeing that when he comes to the media after the AudioGate scandal, people are taking things with a grain of salt in local terms. In local terms, they're taking things with a grain of salt. So the question now, are you of the belief that most of the issues that Chief Secretary Fali Augustine would have raised in the past when it comes to the past administration was just propaganda, or was it actual fact? I think this is a question that is being spurred in this space.
No, but the Chief Secretary would have waved a brown envelope throughout the entire THA election campaign in 2021. And you are saying facts, but we have not seen any evidence of what the Chief Secretary would have purported. Because if there was evidence of wrongdoing on the part of the former political leader of the Tobago Council of the PNM, then that evidence should have been taken to the police and the Integrity Commission, so investigation could have commenced for wrongdoing on the part of the individual. And as a political party, we are saying that if there is wrongdoing on the side of anyone, we are saying take your evidence, take your information to the relevant authorities and let the chips fall where they may. And this chief secretary, we have seen from the time that he has taken office, what he says is adverse to what he does. It's a conveyance. And as you indicated, the chief secretary said coming into office that there was no money. But we would have the People's National Movement would have held a press conference with the former Secretary of Finance, and he would have indicated we are coming to the end of a quarter, we are coming to the end of a month. And at that time, the Tobago House of Assembly was receiving releases from the Ministry of Finance monthly. So if you are in December, you are end of the month, you are at the end of a quarter. In December, we would normally pay workers early, we would make expenditure for goods and services, and whatever expenditure of the assembly that is required to be paid. So those resources for that month would have been exhausted. But what we also took the opportunity to share with the public is that there was a balance on allocation. And the balance on allocation was somewhere in the vicinity of, I think, was $700 million or something like that. So it means that you have that balance on allocation from what you would have received from the Ministry of Finance versus your total allocation, and you will be in receipt of that from January until the end of the financial year in December. But the Chief Secretary came to Tobago and I would say hoodwink, speak misinformed the public about what is happening with the financial resources, and we would have seen true to form that this administration would have received the balance of their allocation and they were able to do what they were required to do. We are also seeing now where this administration has received the largest allocation. But what we are seeing, what is being done with the allocation, and we could see why they have no funds because it is being misappropriated.
All right, Councillor. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to speak about the address Chief Secretary Fali Augustine and his executive members would have done, the pre-recorded address in response to the AudioGate scandal. So we're going to take a quick break, viewers. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Remember to share the live, share the live, share the live.
Put a smile on your face when you're moving from place to place. Good morning.
And we are back, viewers. We're back here and continuing the conversations with the minority councillor. We will be delving into now the address Chief Secretary Fali Augustine would have made in response to the AudioGate scandal. So, councillor, normally we would have expected this to be a press conference where media would have been invited, questions would have been asked, so we could have really put this whole thing to rest. But sadly, it would have been a pre-recorded address that the Tobago public would have been exposed to. What are your thoughts on that pre-recorded address?
It was very disappointing because after we would have waited so long and after the Chief Secretary indicated to media personnel that he will speak soon, I think the public expected that he will face the press and he will answer whatever questions that will be posed to him in relation to this AudioGate. Again, the Chief Secretary would have promised greater transparency, accountability, and good governance. And having a pre-recorded, I don't even know what to call it, having this pre-recorded briefing did not show greater accountability, greater transparency, or good governance. And they were in this room that was so dark and gloomy. And as the political leader of the Tobago Council of the People's National Movement would have compared it to what he said, it seemed to be a funeral. Yes, so the Chief Secretary may have been eulogizing himself, and it was quite disappointed because we anticipated that he would have exposed himself to be subject to questions and answers. And the other thing that was quite interesting is that the Chief Secretary did not categorically deny that the audio recording was a fake. He did not deny that they may have botched or put several clippings together to create a narrative, as he would have called it. And he did not indicate that it was any artificial intelligence. And that was very telling. It was telling to a lot of members of the public. And we expected better. We expected greater accountability. And we expected the Chief Secretary to come to the public and face the music, so to speak.
All right, Councillor. And because with these conferences, when it comes to the dissemination of information, the public will heavily depend on media personnel to ask the questions and represent the public opinion.
Yes, and ask the questions that they have been asking, because there has been a lot of questions in the space. When did it happen? Who was in the meeting? Why were you conspiring? You know, there are a lot of questions that still remain unanswered, because the Chief Secretary spent over an hour sharing or briefing the public, and he spent approximately less than 5 minutes dealing with the whole issue of the conspiracy and the audio gate. He maligned contractors, he called all sorts of names, but the substantive issue that people were waiting for 24 days to hear about, the Chief Secretary spent the least time dealing with that issue. And there was no opportunity for the media to elaborate more on that issue to the benefit of the public. And that was quite disappointing.
Understood, Councillor. And before we jump to the big guns, that's calling them to demit office, calling them to leave and resign, do you think that we should also call for them to have a genuine press conference, one where the media can be present and ask the question, one where we can have a release where at the end of the day it wouldn't give more questions and answers? Do you think that before we jump to the big guns, that we could just ask the Chief Secretary, we want the transparency, we will promise, can we have a press conference where media personnel can be present to have the questions asked?
Well, I don't know. I feel like the ship has sailed for that, because what the Chief Secretary promises and what he does, as we would have indicated before, it doesn't happen. So the Chief Secretary promised ex gratia, and he would have made several dates by which the ex gratia should have been paid. And to date, we have not seen that. The Chief Secretary would have said that if you are caught in corruption and if you are caught in wrongdoing, you will be removed from the Executive Council. We are seeing corruption, we are seeing wrongdoing, and the Chief Secretary and his team is still in office. The Chief Secretary would have indicated that he will do a reshuffle. To this date, we have not seen any reshuffle. The Chief Secretary would have made a lot of promises, and those promises remain unkept. So I have no expectation. I think that ship has sailed. The Police and the Integrity Commission is doing its work, and we are pleading for one last time for the Chief Secretary to do the right thing, honor his words, and demit office. Allow the people to make a judgment and choose who they require to restore good governance, decency, and dignity to the Assembly.
All right, Minority Councillor. So sadly, time is of the essence, but I want to thank you for joining us here this morning on the Youth Wednesday show to have that discussion about the political climate here in Tobago. Hopefully, we can have you here again to have these informative conversations. Yes. So I want to thank you once again, viewers. That was our Minority Councillor, Mrs. Petal, Daniel Benoit, as we chatted a bit about the political climate here in Tobago. Now we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Just remember to share the live, share the live, share the live.